Hi, and welcome back to another edition of The Journey with Joe. Special shout out to our sponsor, Docent Breweries, San Juan Capistrano. Check them out if you haven't. They are super duper awesome. Boutique little brewery. Great stuff on draft. You'll love them. Check it out. I am super honored to have Michelle Fonseca-Kamana, Miss West Coast Lemons here. Although I'm the only one in yellow today. I went all branding. But I'm super grateful that you were to come and we could do this in person aside from just social media likes and shout outs and stuff like that. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate you being more on brand than I am today.
Yeah, I went for it. I'm like, listen, I need a yellow shirt. We're going to make this happen. So, no, super cool. So, I mean, lemon law attorney, right? Like law, taxes, mortgage, like finance stuff in general is boring, right? And so I think that's how we initially connected through Provisors, and it was like, wow, she does law, right? But you make it kind of fun. So how did you get into law? Are you in a family of attorneys, or what made you get into law? And then how'd you wind up in lemon law? Because like I talk to a lot of lawyers. I don't know anybody that does lemon law at all, right? And has passion for lemon law, which I think is crazy. So how'd you get into law? Like what sprung that?
Yeah. Completely randomly, honestly. I have no attorneys in the family.
Yeah.
I'm first generation Colombian American. So both of my parents were immigrants from Colombia.
Woo.
So growing up, I had a lot of expectations of me. So I was always the eldest daughter, expected to go to school.
The American dream.
Yep, exactly. So I knew education was going to be important for me. And in college is kind of where I had that shift. I was a communications major, history minor.
Oh.
I loved storytelling, but I wanted to have a little bit more of a purpose to the stories that I told.
Yeah.
So junior year, I had to get an internship to kind of figure out what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Because my parents are like, all right, TikTok.
Yeah.
What are with your master's degree, PhD, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so I got an internship with the Santa Barbara County Probation Office.
Oh.
I actually worked at the Santa Barbara County Jail.
Dang.
So my parents were thrilled by that, of course.
Yeah.
Their daughter, little sorority girl going into county jail every other day.
Oh my God.
But I loved it. So my job there was to interview people accused of crimes to see if they should be released on their own recognizance, meaning they didn't have to pay bail. So I would go in and interview them, talk to their families, and write a report and recommendation for the judge. And I realized this is amazing. I love hearing their stories and kind of trying to find the positives in a very negative situation. And so that was my aha moment where I said, I think I can make a career out of this. I don't just want to write the reports. I want to be the person actually advocating for them and making a difference.
Wow.
So I Googled, what do I do to go to law school?
No way.
Called my dad up. It was very much like the movie Legally Blonde. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Where she wakes
Elle
up.
Woods.
Yeah. Elle Woods tracks my my early days, where I basically woke up one day and said, I think I'm going to go to law school. Called my dad, told him that. And he was like, that's great, honey.
Really?
Yeah. Googled it. Had no idea what the LSAT was, what the process was. Had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah.
But I just thought this is a way for me to have a little bit more of a purpose with the skills that I already had as a communications major.
Yeah.
So I studied, took the LSAT. I remember we lived on the ocean in Del Playa in Santa Barbara my senior year in the sorority house. And so there's these huge house parties going on. I'm locked in my room with headphones studying for the LSAT.
Oh, no way.
Like I gotta get into a good law school. I need to do this. So it was really, really humble beginnings. I didn't really have anyone to talk to about what I was getting into.
You just decided to go for it.
Yeah, I was like, this is what I'm
doing. Has anybody else in your family followed suit? Like, anybody else decide they want to go law?
No, I think I scared them off.
Wow. That's crazy. So you're like going to the jails, young, good looking, going to prison every couple of days a week. And you must have heard some crazy stories, huh?
Crazy. And the crazier, the better. Like, I loved, like, The crazier the crime they were accused of, the more excited I was about the case.
Really?
Yeah. It was like, give me some. I remember when I started interning, my boss knew the craziest cases that would come in, he would give them to me. So I was like, oh, you got a bank robbery for me? Like, let me talk to him. You got
way.
alleged murder? Like, let me talk to him.
Really?
And I loved it. I loved getting to talk to them about.
That's like real life true crimes.
It was. And it
You
was
were like
before
that
the
guy.
podcast
Yeah. You were like the guy. Who's the guy who did the old gray haired dude who does all of the true crime shows? You got to have those interviews.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I got to have those moments.
Wow. But they're all really trying to get over on you, aren't they? Like they're all trying to give you some. Are they trying to like sell you on why they should get out?
Some of
I'm
them
fascinated
were.
by this. By the
Yeah,
way.
no, some of them
People
were.
are fascinated.
And for a lot of it, that was my job, was to get them out of jail, get them out on bail, and to defend them. And there were just so many intricacies in that I love, because a lot of people will ask me, how do you represent someone you know is guilty? And that's the thing. You never really know
Yeah.
if someone's guilty or not. Your job is to make sure they have a fair day in court, a fair trial.
Yeah.
It's not your job to judge them. You're not the judge. You're not the jury. It's your job to make sure that the process works the way that it's supposed to.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of power in that. And I remember I used to read the police reports and kind of prejudge sometimes some of these cases. And then I'd talk to them and be like, why did you do that?
Yeah,
There's so much more to this story. And
Three
so
sides to every story, right?
Mhm.
His, hers, and the truth.
Exactly.
Or yours, mine, and the truth.
Mhm.
Wow, that's so fascinating. I would be fascinated by that too. But it's weird the way life put you in that position, right?
Mhm.
Like of all of the internships,
Yeah.
like what made you take the internship at the jail? You were just interested by the whole.
Honestly, I was just applying at a lot of different places,
like,
and then that
"Let's see
one
what
caught my
sticks."
attention
Yeah.
because I was like, oh, I get to go to county jail. That seems like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Oh my gosh!
And then turns out I thrived in that environment. I thought it was amazing.
Wow, that's crazy.
It was so fun.
Yeah, that's cool. So then you get through sorority life and you take the LSAT.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the LSAT for like a minion like me who doesn't know?
Yeah.
'Cause I was gonna Google it when you leave. But we might as well just
Oh, yeah.
fess up. Say Joe doesn't know.
How to become an attorney 101.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I had to Google it, to be fair, so I didn't know either.
Yeah.
It's a test you have to take in order to get into law school. So it's kind of like the SATs and the
Okay.
ACTs for college.
Different than the bar exam.
Different than the bar
So that's
exam.
just to get into law school.
Just to get into law
Oh
school.
boy, that's why I didn't go to law
It's
school.
like all these logic games, mind games. Like it's just,
Yeah, it's a lot.
it's like hazing. I swear, all of those tests,
Really?
the bar exam, law school, the LSAT, is hazing. It really doesn't help you become a better attorney. It just weeds out a lot of people.
It weeds out people. Yeah.
So, I mean, it is a difficult profession, so maybe there is something to that.
Yeah.
But,
It's a
I
lot
could
of
have
work.
done without that.
Yeah. So where'd you go to law school?
USD Law in
Okay.
San Diego.
Nice. So from Santa Barbara to San Diego.
Mhm.
That's cool.
So all the beach schools.
All the beach schools.
For my
Nothing
own
wrong with that.
sanity.
Yeah. My daughter's in the process of going to college and she didn't want to go to the beach. She wanted to get out of California and kind of
Okay.
looked at other schools. I'm like, dude, like, why would you not want to stay by the beach? She's like, no, I can come back to the beach. Go figure.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think you appreciate it.
So then you go to law school, and how do you decide what type of law? Like I'm totally interested, right? Like I don't know
Yeah.
if I was to go to law school, if I was to become a lawyer, what kind of law would Joe Soto practice? I don't know. I'm going to think about that. By the time we get to the end, I will
Yeah,
give you
I
an
wanna
answer.
know.
On that. So then how do you decide on what you're going to study or what you're going to practice?
So since I had the experience with kind of county jail and the criminal defense system, I thought that's what I'm going to do. I'm
Yeah.
good at it. I enjoy, I'm not afraid of going into county jail, and a lot of people were.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that was the good next step for me. And so I went to law school. I was very young at the time. So, Legally Blonde definitely tracked my experience as well because, I was this 21-year-old sorority girl, went to UCSB, going to school with people that were significantly older than me. didn't necessarily take me that seriously. You know, they would make jokes. Oh, you remind me of my kids.
Oh,
you know, we're colleagues here.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a bit of a stigma in terms of where you went to college too. So a lot of people that went to Ivy Leagues, they kind of looked down on, you know, even the UCs or the Cal States. And so there were a lot of different dynamics that I wasn't ready for.
Yeah.
Especially coming from UCSB, that it was so collaborative. Everyone was so kind. It was very much like work hard, play hard. Everyone can win. And then law school is very adversarial.
Yeah.
And I was like, why doesn't everyone get along? I didn't understand that.
Wow.
So that was a huge wake up call. And I was young too at the time, trying to process all of this.
Yeah.
And I didn't do very well my first semester either. So I almost dropped out after first semester. I got the first C I had ever gotten on a report card. And I was just so ashamed. I didn't want to tell my dad. I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to be so disappointed in me.
Yeah.
And also dealing with everything that I'm hearing from my classmates, why are you wearing
start to believe that?
Yeah, maybe you're not
Self-doubt.
good enough to be here. And so I got in my head, but thankfully my dad talked me through it. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You'll pivot. You'll figure out how to make this work, but don't give up now. Yeah. Not yet. Like, give it another semester at least. So I'm glad that I did. I was never like an all-star student, but I did all right. But I ended up interning with the San Diego County Public Defender's Office.
Oh, okay.
So my second and third years, I got my dream internship with them.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, this is all happening for me.
This is it. This is the way it's supposed to go.
Yeah. This is what I meant to do. And, another reality check came when I graduated and you apply for post bars. So you take the bar exam in July.
Yeah.
Well, you graduate like May, take the bar exam July. You don't get results until November. Yeah. So another hazing. Like, why do you need to wait that long?
I never understood that, and I've heard that before, and I'm like, it's 2023, right? Like, come on. Like, we're past Scantrons, but you do it on a computer, right? Yeah. Literally, they know pretty quick if you passed or not. I know there's essays and stuff involved, but come on.
And it shouldn't take that
Shouldn't take that many months. Yeah.
No.
And they let everybody know on the same day, right?
Like pretty right much before Thanksgiving too. So what a
So if you pass, it's great, but if you fail, you're like, my life's over. I suck.
And you have to deal with your family and telling them.
Everybody asking, so how'd you do?
Yeah.
Shame,
no comment.
Shame. Yeah.
So it's rough. So the post-bar position kind of covers you during that gap period.
Okay.
So I applied for it. I thought, of course I'm going to get it.
I've been interning.
I kicked butt at this, for 2 years, was one of the best interns there. And I didn't get the post-bar. And that was one of my first realizations that even if you are the best person for the job, you're not necessarily going to get it. It's very much more about who you know than what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the people that got the job, they would go to all the networking events. They schmoozed with the
professors,
the director that was in charge of hiring. And I didn't particularly care for him. So I was like, well, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Worked to my detriment at the time. But now looking back, it just reminds me of this quote that says, rejection is God's protection. It's either yours or it's not.
Ooh, I like that.
And for me, I thought that was what I was meant to do. I was going to be a public defender. I was going to be great at it. That was going to be my life.
Yeah.
And looking back, my real purpose, I think, in life was meant for something else.
Yeah.
And seeing what I've been able to do with my career, as a business owner, speaking to people, mentoring people, inspiring other people, that never would have happened had I gotten what I thought was my quote unquote dream job at the time. So it's very interesting having that perspective that it could be the worst day of your life, but it really might have been the best day to set
you don't
up.
realize it when you're in it either, right? Like you're in it and you're like, this is the worst, right? Like I'm a failure and this is not the way it's supposed to be, but it always goes the way it's supposed to be, right? Like God always has a plan. And so it always works out the way it's supposed to work out. I thought it was interesting what you said about the law school and how people treat each other, right? Like, so I was the only Spanish kid in an all boys high school. I was like, me and Joe, oh my gosh, last name was Vidal. Sorry, I can't remember his first name. We were the only two Puerto Ricans in the school.
Yeah.
And I just remember that was like the first time in my life where it was like, people looked down on me because I wasn't from the same background, or it was like less, not poor, but I wasn't the same. I wasn't equal, right? And so I would imagine that you ran into that along the way because a couple of things. One, you're Spanish. Two, you're a female. Three, it's mostly men in your world, right? So talk to me about that, because that's another piece. I have daughters. That's another piece that you're fighting that battle, right?
Yeah.
And you're dealing with, and I'm sure you're still dealing with it today, because guys are jerks and people suck. We live in a world where people suck. But talk to me about that. Like, did you run into challenges with that, and how did that affect you? Or, you know, I always say it either paralyzes you or propels you. How did that affect you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've grown up with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because I've encountered that a lot throughout my life. So I've always wanted to kind of over excel to be able to show people like, look, I did it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't tell me what I can or can't do. I get to judge that, determine that. The rules are very different for men and women, especially in the area of law. And I was lucky enough to have some professors that tried to caution me about how life would be in practice. And a lot of it had to do with how we were expected to dress.
Oh, really?
And so I remember when I did my first felony jury trial, it was like the second month I became an attorney. They shipped me off to this random county called Madera County.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very much like, I joke, my legal experience was first Legally Blonde, and then the second part was My Cousin Vinny.
Really? Oh, because you were fish out of water.
Fish out of water.
Oh, that's great.
I was just being sent on these like expeditions, like literally month 2 as a brand new baby attorney, being sent off to represent a gentleman accused of felony burglary in a county I'd never been in by myself. Like they didn't even co-counsel with me, even though the main 2 gentlemen at the firm had decades of experience, but the client didn't like either of them. So he was about to fire the firm, and then they had me take a look at the case. I found some loopholes we could work with, ran it by the client. He's like, you're in.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, okay.
Here I go. Madera County, here I come.
Yeah, it was
my gosh.
Tiny courthouse, like one story, just like 2 or 3 departments.
Yeah. It's small town USA, right? Like it's like Main Street, there's the courthouse. Oh, yeah. And right next door is City Hall. Yeah. Like one of those, right?
A lot of agriculture. You know, you're just driving through dirt roads at some points and, you know, very fish out of water for someone that was born and raised in Southern California.
No beaches.
No. And so during that trial, the DA was also a woman, and she kept coming into court with these suits that were a few sizes too tight and these giant heels. And I thought back to what I had learned, like,
don't do that.
Danger, problem. This is bad. The jury's not going to like this. And so I remember I would report back to the 2 owners, male attorneys at the firm every day. And I was like, hey, the DA is coming dressed like this every day. I think that's a problem. And they were like, Michelle, this isn't sorority time. It doesn't matter what people wear. You're reading too much into this. I was like, okay.
All right, whatever.
Fair enough. Turns out, you know, the trial ended. We lost. You know, they had a confession on us, so I wasn't expecting a lot, but we shot our shot. Yeah. But afterwards, the jury can talk to you about how you did and explain their verdict. Yeah. And so the foreman and another juror wanted to speak with us. And so I was like, oh no, like this was my first trial. They're going to grill me. They're going to get you. The only reason they wanted to talk to us was to address the DA's attire. Oh. And so they just explicitly were like, we felt like your attire throughout the whole trial was very unprofessional. It's too tight. You need to go, buy clothes that fit. And just the look on her face, I think I was shocked, like, this is a thing. Like jurors
Oh no.
really latch onto that, and they'll be distracted by what you're trying to say because of what you're
Because of how
wearing.
you look, yeah.
And so I reported back, like,
This is what happened.
told you so. This stuff is a real issue for women. And I've even heard from colleagues since then, like, even if they're not married, they'll put on a wedding ring because they don't want that kind of perception from the jurors. Like, oh, what's wrong with her? She's in her 40s or 50s and not married.
Oh, wow.
You know, we are dealing with that as female trial attorneys in terms of, you know, what we wear to, you know, whether you're married or not.
Yeah, otherwise you damage goods. I don't want you defending me.
Yeah. Or I don't trust you, you know, from the jury's perspective. They're like, oh, there's something wrong with her. But the other one, you know, the gentleman, he's got a wedding ring on, he's dressed in his nice suit. It's all this implicit bias that goes so much deeper than you would have thought.
Yeah, I would never even think of it. But it's so true because we do that outside of the courtroom, right? We do it everywhere. So imagine if you're confined to a courtroom, you're there 3, 5, 7, 10 days on a jury. Like you're just going to start to nitpick, right? You're going to start to point out flaws. And it could be stupid things. It could be something like the way they talk or how they say, or right? Like that's really bad for audio though, by the way. Sorry, Joaquin. That was bad for audio. Hopefully the captions come up good for that. Anyway, but yeah, you're right. I mean, they're going to pick up on all of that stuff, right? And they're going to judge you. The same way the judge is there, the jury is going to judge everybody in the room. That's interesting.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I've never been on a jury.
Oh, I want to be on a jury so badly.
Are you? Can you?
Yeah, I can. So I've gotten called for jury, but especially
when they find out you're an attorney, you're out.
I haven't even gotten to the box to be questioned. So I'm like, please,
really?
I would love to, because it's kind of behind the scenes, almost undercover boss-ish.
Yeah.
Because then you get to see other attorneys and you kind of get to see how jurors actually take in information and analyze it and process it. So that'd be great for me to know.
Yeah.
From the inside.
Boss, attorney edition.
It'd be so great.
That would be cool.
Movie, HBO, Netflix,
what?
call us.
Yeah. Once you get called, now that we talked about it, you're going to get called. You're going to be like, dang it, now I'm stuck on a 12-day trial. I don't want to be here. The other people smell. You'll be like, this was the worst thing ever. But no, it'd be cool. I never thought of it like that. But yeah, you're a mole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. If I ever go, I'll wear a mic. If they ever pick me, I'll be like, I'll bring one of my wireless mics.
Just report back afterwards.
I'll report back to you afterwards.
A little debrief.
That is hilarious. So then you get out of that and you get into cars? Like, are you a car person? Like,
no, it's funny. So I was in Fresno for that first attorney job.
Yeah.
Because when I graduated, you know, I kind of cut ties with the public defender's office. I was like, okay, you guys didn't want me for post-bar. You don't deserve me for the attorney position.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm a Scorpio. I'm Colombian.
Yeah. You're like, I'm not going to take that shit.
No, absolutely not. And so ended up getting a job in Fresno because my now husband lived out there and we had been long distance during law school.
Oh.
So funny story with that, my sorority sister married his cousin. And so we met at that wedding.
No way. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool.
The only time our paths probably would have crossed was
that day.
That weekend.
Yeah.
That weekend.
Wow, that's cool.
So it's funny. And
is he a lawyer too?
No, he's a 5th grade teacher.
Oh, really?
So it's a
good
great
balance.
Great balance.
Great balance. You couldn't have two alphas like that together. Really. Yeah, that would not be good.
No, I need him to calm me down and be the patient one of the two.
Yeah.
So it's a good teamwork.
Good mix. 5th grade teacher. That's fun.
Yeah.
I could never do that job, by the way. That's like my death job.
Oh, yeah.
I would not want to be with the kids. I would not want to, like, it's sorry, teacher, shout out to the teachers.
Yeah.
I could never do that job.
No, hearing the stories, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. No, thanks. I'd
me.
rather be locked up in rooms with adults than to kids.
Yeah. I'd rather go to county jail.
I'd rather go to I'd rather. What's your husband's name?
Brandon.
Brandon, she just said she'd rather go to county jail than to go to your classroom for a day. That's the best.
Oh, no, to be in charge
to be in charge of the kids. Yeah,
I'm like, I'll go for career day, but to be in charge of 30,
no deal.
10-year-olds?
One convict over 30 10-year-olds.
Yeah, 1,000%. I can control them.
Yeah. That is
too
so
much
funny.
Now, but he's fantastic at it. So
that's cool.
He's found his calling with that.
That's awesome.
I'll stick to the adults and threatening people. So
yeah.
That's fun.
So did you have somebody who got burned by like a lemon law deal, or like how did that work out?
No. So I literally just wanted another job. And I knew criminal defense, it's very heavy work, you know, with a lot of those cases.
Trials.
Your worst fear really as a criminal defense attorney is knowing that your client is innocent and you're the only one between them and an unfair sentence. That's a heavy, heavy burden to carry day in and day out. So I knew I needed to diversify just for the sake of my own mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, respect to everyone that does criminal defense, public defenders, private practice. It's very important work, but it just wasn't a long-term solution for me.
Yeah, that's good.
So I was thinking, okay, a lot of firms would do something in civil litigation and do criminal defense. So I thought, all right, let's
try civil.
Get some experience there, because I avoided it like the plague. It was my worst grades in law school.
Really?
Everyone was like, you should definitely not do that, honey.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like, well, fair enough. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And at that point, I wanted to change. So I applied to all these civil litigation jobs in San Diego. And the first one I got was a lemon law job. They were like, do you know anything about cars? No.
Nope.
You're hired.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, great. So I worked for that firm, and it was night and day from criminal defense. It was funny because it went from very much my cousin Vinny, very humble beginnings, figuring things out, to working in a high rise in San Diego, all these perks. You know, you would go to Cabo with the firm every year. You would go on pub crawls when you would win a trial. It was just this glamorous version of being an attorney that I had really only seen in the TV shows.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is nice. Like, I wouldn't mind being kind of wined and dined and, you know, have this life for a bit. Turns out a lot of that was more of a distraction to a pretty toxic work environment. And so it was a tough time for me working at that first firm, because there was no real training, no real mentorship. It was kind of the blind leading the blind. No one would last more than 3 months. You'd either quit or be fired.
Oh, dang.
So there was this constant turnover. Of attorneys, and then the cases would constantly be reshuffled. So some of my clients had been with that firm the whole time. They were on their third attorney.
Oh, dang.
And they're asking me like, hey, what's
going on?
Why does everyone keep leaving? I was like, I'm trying to figure that out too, honey. Like,
oh, shoot.
I don't know. And slowly, and being the only Spanish-speaking attorney, of course, whenever the Spanish-speaking attorneys would get fired, I'd get all of those files.
Ooh.
And so sometimes these files were grossly mismanaged, and so I had to play catch up because the attorney on the case for the last 3 months
did nothing,
didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
So it was bad. It was a lot of micromanaging on just a level I had never seen.
Oh, dang.
You weren't allowed to. They had a memo that said no drive-bys, which meant you couldn't approach the managing partner to ask a question. You had to email for permission to speak to him.
Oh, shoot.
So
that's a bad sign.
That's fun. So even to quit that job, I had to email for permission to talk to him to quit my job.
Oh, damn.
And wait like a few business days to hear back.
To set up an appointment.
Yeah.
That sucks.
So it was rough. And I remember talking to HR a few times, and they were like, well, maybe you should work longer hours to keep up with all these other cases that just got dumped on you. And I was like,
No.
My mental health went
south.
Super south. I wasn't working out. You know, I'd come home crying probably more days than not. And I was just trying to keep my head above water, because in my head I was like, this is your dream job. This is your dream city. Like, why are you, I didn't register. This is all
supposed to be perfect.
Yeah, this is what you wanted. And, I didn't have.
Just wasn't the environment you wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so luckily, another kind of divine intervention, God's looking out.
Yeah.
I wasn't even looking for another job, but I got recommended for another job in lemon law by the attorney for Toyota. So the defense attorney I worked against recommended me, and the mediator that would handle a lot of the lemon law cases. Both of them were friends with this guy named Lawrence in LA. They're like, he's looking for an associate. We think you'd be a good fit. You should talk to him.
Interesting.
And he had been calling me at the firm under this guys. Yeah. Like, hey, call me back. And I looked him up and I was like, this guy's been doing lemon law for like 30 years. Like, he doesn't need my advice on a case. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so finally, Toyota's attorney kind of tricked me into talking to him because he sent me an email like, oh, I want to talk about this case. And I was like, oh, great. We're going to settle this case. That was like one of our worst cases. And he's like, oh, actually, I don't want to talk about the case. Like, you need to call Lawrence back.
Oh, shoot.
So I took the meeting with him, and he ran his law firm out of this old house in Bellflower.
Okay.
So when I went there,
you were like, what is going on here?
Yeah. I told my husband and some of my friends, like, if I don't give you proof of life in 30 minutes, like,
call the police.
Send someone.
Yeah.
And I went after work one day because I had depositions up in LA on my way back down to San Diego. So stopped by Bellflower to have the meeting, and he answers the door. He's in like these ripped jeans, like a dirty white t-shirt. I'm like, this is
who is this guy?
Different. And he basically sits me down and was like, how much do I need to pay you to come work for me? And I was like, this is new.
Yeah.
And so I drove back down to San Diego that night and told my husband, we had only been in San Diego for like 7 months at the time.
Oh, dang.
And I had just uprooted him from Fresno, away from his family.
Oh.
So I'm like, hey, you want to move to Orange County? But it just was the perfect opportunity. And I don't know that I would have been open to that opportunity had circumstances been so bad at the San Diego job.
For sure, yeah. That was a blessing that it was so bad.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So I took the job and moved back to Orange County, so closer to my family, my parents, my brother. Just commuted to Bellflower, so it wasn't too bad.
Not too bad.
And that was kind of the real beginning of me in lemon law, because he mentored me. He really taught me the law. Like, he set me basically through lemon law school.
Wow, that's cool.
Had me read cases, and then he'd quiz me on it. So he'd have me read cases, and if I didn't answer quickly enough, he'd be like, do, 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 do.
Really?
And I'd get so frustrated because I was like,
so
I don't know. They didn't teach me anything at the other job. Like, I'm kind of still learning a lot of this.
Really? That's cool.
But he really set me up and taught me basically all of the foundational things that I know now. And it got to the point, I worked for him for about 3 years. He was coming to me for advice on cases more than I was going to him for advice.
Wow, that's cool.
So once that shifted, I was like, wow, I'm actually really good at this.
Yeah, the student became the teacher.
Yeah.
That's good.
And he was at about retirement age, so he had always been playing around with the idea of maybe I retire, maybe, I take a step back. We had a few conversations about me taking over. It just wasn't a good fit for me to take over, but it got my wheels spinning. Yeah. I never thought I was going to run my own law firm. It was already just becoming an attorney was a victory in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it got to the point where all roads kind of led to
start your own firm.
Yeah, because I didn't want to end up in another toxic work environment. I didn't know what was going to happen if and when he did retire. And then, option 3 is you start your own thing. And, instead of preserving someone else's legacy, you build your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started, really building everything from scratch. So it was summer of 2019, and there was a book called Crushing It by Gary Vee. Do you have it? Oh my God, you have it.
I do. Right?
Yeah. Iconic book for me.
Iconic book.
Iconic book.
Of course I do.
But that was the book that really, triggered that light bulb in my head, because it's a lot of stories of individuals from conservative industries, like
totally.
Finance,
that's what I was thinking as you're telling me, because you go from loss, it's structure, it's security, right? High C personalities. Mm-hmm. You're like, all right, I've got this job, I'm safe, maybe I'll make partner, that's cool. But here, a lot of lawyers stay at the same firm for ever.
Yeah.
So taking that leap, scary.
Terrifying. I think my family was terrified for me.
Really?
I was nervous, and we didn't even know the pandemic was going to be a thing then either.
Yeah. That was 2019?
2019.
Yeah, 19. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right in time for a pandemic.
Yeah. So I still worked for that firm, but I was still, after work, any free time I had, I was building, what kind of licenses do I have? Once again, I went to Google. How do you start a business? What do I need? Taught myself how to make a website. I made my own website still up to this day.
Nice.
And just kind of got all my ducks in a row and saved as much money as I could. At the time, unfortunately, I don't have any rich uncles or trust funds. It's me.
Yeah.
And my husband at the time was finishing up his teaching credentials. So I had been supporting us. So I knew, okay, he's going to be done soon. He'll get his teaching job and then I'll start the firm and, teamwork.
Yeah,
We'll get by.
Both. We'll double up.
Yeah. And so January came around. I was going to quit on Valentine's Day of 2020. But the firm had actually slowed down a lot. And so we were down to just a few cases in January. And he had a conversation with me at the end of January, like, I don't think I can keep you. I'm sorry, but it ended up being one of those other blessings in disguise because I was going to quit 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
But having it be, more on his terms, ended up helping us kind of preserve our relationship as well. And his only ask was, don't tell any of our current clients that you're starting your own firm because they'll go with you.
They'll go with you. Yeah.
I was like, well, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So I only ended up taking one client because he was very attached to me at the time. Started my own firm February of 2020.
Yep.
3 weeks later, the pandemic hit. And that is really what propelled me into social media.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to take a little bit break. We're going to talk about that. We'll take a quick break, and then we're going to get into that and how you've made the social media. You've made a law interesting, which is amazing. And then we'll touch some more about growing that business because I think that's super interesting too. So, quick break. If you're looking for a really cool brewery with an awesome feel and vibe and great food, check out Docent Brewery in San Juan Capistrano. They focus on great craftsmanship, community, and independence, bringing you all different styles and different beers for you to try. Check them out, Docent Breweries, San Juan Cap. Now back to the show. All right, so we're back with Michelle Fonseca-Kamana, West Coast Lemons. And so let's go back just really quick before we get into the whole social media and how you've made it interesting. Starting that firm, right? Like if you're talking to a young attorney out there or somebody who's like, maybe they're in that bad situation, right? They don't like where they're at, but they don't want to take that leap. What advice would you give that person and go, what would you tell them that you wish you would have done sooner or known or, whatever? Because I think that's a lot of people are stuck. Yeah. So if you feel stuck, how do you get unstuck?
I would say network. That was the biggest mistake I made in my early career was I didn't go network. I didn't meet other people. I was very much at firms that were kind of isolated islands and you would only interact with people at the firm. You wouldn't go out to networking events, no bar association events. That was a colossal mistake on my part because in those networking relationships, you can learn of other positions. You can kind of get more intel on what's normal versus what's not. So for me, in that first civil litigation job, I just thought maybe this is how it is. So my mentee is kind of in a similar situation where she was not sure about whether what she was going through was normal or not. And she didn't necessarily want to go work for another firm thinking that all firms were like that, where you would just kind of be another cog in the machine. There's no work-life balance. But talking to other people allows you to get some perspective.
Yes.
And know, okay, this is one way like to do it. Yeah. And there are a lot of firms that thrive in that and a lot of attorneys that like that.
Yeah.
But if you want more of a balance, that also exists.
Yes.
So I would say talk to people, network, try to treat yourself as your own business. So even though you might not necessarily want to start your own business right now, treat yourself as a business. So see if you can start building a personal brand. Make sure everyone knows what it is that you do.
Yes.
And then you'd be surprised at the amount of referrals and business you might be able to generate. You know,
Yeah.
for me, I've always been pretty introverted. So I was never going to be that person that's
Really?
going to go hand out my business card. I'm the lemon law attorney.
That's not you.
No, I'm not
That's funny.
going to, approach people in a networking room. I'm terrified.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's been a skill I've had to
You
work
on it. Yeah.
But initially, hell no. That
Wow,
was
that's
not
funny.
my area. And that was a big reason why I never thought I would do well as a business owner, because I was like, well, I'm not a brain maker. I'm not an extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be, I will hustle, but not in that way.
Yeah.
And so, having that ability to practice that skill while you're still being paid by someone else is a huge opportunity, because you can start to see, okay, well, I'm bringing in some business for my firm.
Yeah.
That's great. But it might give you an opportunity to see, maybe I can actually translate this into something I can do on my own. So you take baby steps before you get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily need to jump like I did. Like,
Yeah.
all right, here we go.
I think a lot what you're saying in there, right, is you have to network so that you can sell yourself. Because at the end of the day, yes, you're part of the firm, but clients want to work with you, right? And I think a lot of people in whatever business or company you work for, if there's some sort of sales or relationship experience in there, then you have to brand yourself. You have to sell yourself. You have to promote yourself, because XYZ firm isn't going to do that, right? 99. I've worked for 1,000 mortgage, well, not 1,000. I worked for a bunch of mortgage companies. None of them want to promote Joe, right? They want to promote company, and its firms are the same, right? And so I think when you promote yourself and you get out there and you get uncomfortable, that allows you to get your own referrals, and then you do become the rainmaker, right? You do become maybe not the rainmaker, but you're the trusted source.
Yeah.
Right. And they go to you as the source as opposed to Uncle Google, right? Which is like, let me find a lemon law attorney, right? Like now they're like, hey, I know somebody from my networking group, or I met somebody here and they do that. Right. And then that's how you connected and having more conversations and talking to more people.
Exactly.
Now your reach has gotten wide, right? Like, so the power of social media, and you and I met through the Provisors, and I seeked you out because I am the king seeker of people, right? Like, I'm like, so I really need to meet with you, and I know you're busy, so thank you for giving me your time, because you really did. You inspired me and pushed me, because I look at mortgages being so boring. There is almost nothing as boring as mortgage except for law. Law is terrible. But you've really done a good job in branding yourself, right? Like I literally had to go in and look up your last name, because I knew it was Michelle, but I was like, oh, it's Michelle, West Coast Lemons, right? Like you've become like that name. And so how did that start? Like, and what made you start doing it? I guess some of it was the pandemic, right? But you've done a really good job in branding yourself and making things interesting. And now I've seen that you're throwing around some more like wins, right? Like in the beginning, it was none of, you weren't throwing that around.
No.
Right. And now I'm seeing like settlement, win, we did this, badass, look at me. Right. So like that's part of your growth and your journey too. But like what made you start doing that, Len? And no other attorneys are doing that, by the way, like zero. Right. So like what made you break out of that comfort zone?
Necessity, honestly.
Okay.
At the beginning, I started my firm with no connections, no contacts. I had never done networking. So I launched my practice. I had a little bit of momentum for 3 weeks. Then the pandemic happened. And then it was radio silence. Like I got nothing but robocalls for 2 months. And back then I was answering my own phone. So as a new business owner, like the phone's ringing, this is great. No one's on the other side, or it's just a robot.
Car warranty.
Yeah, exactly. My worst enemies.
Yeah, your worst enemy.
So it was very hard to kind of keep the faith that there was a purpose behind this. I was supposed to launch when I launched, but I just don't know the reason yet.
Yeah.
And so, I was raised, as a woman of faith too. So in the back of my head, like,
keep your faith.
It's going to be okay. Like, this is right. You've prayed about this. And so I was like, okay, we got to keep chugging along. And at the beginning, 2020, my content was very different than what it is now. And it was a lot of that insecurity too. I didn't want to be the face of my business because of the reasons we talked about.
Yeah.
Who's going to trust like a young female attorney? First of all, area of law is male dominated. The automotive industry is very male dominated.
Yeah,
so, I always knew if I could get someone on the phone, I could lock them down. I am, I back myself as a fantastic lemon law attorney, but getting them to make that call was the struggle. And so I was very self-conscious and didn't want to be the face of the business for that reason. I kind of wanted to hide behind West Coast Lemons.
Oh, okay.
So I would use like a lot of stock photos. I tried some memes at the beginning that were just not very funny.
I normally would go and look at your early posts. I didn't do that this time. I should have.
You should. It's pretty
bad.
bad.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of growth. But I would do that. I was terrified. I didn't do any videos for like the first 6 months.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, we were living off of my savings because the pandemic hit. My husband wasn't able to get a teaching job. I wasn't making any money. Courts were frozen. So the 2 cases I had were stuck in this limbo.
Yeah.
No. And so I was like, okay, every day it's just looking at the bank account go down and down and down. Like, I know this was the right choice, but, I need to catch a break here. And what I was doing wasn't working. So I thought, all right, you got to be on video. You need to put yourself out there. And things were trending that way. So back then it was IGTV.
Yeah.
The, standard YouTube videos, those were what were playing well. Reels weren't a thing back then.
No.
So I started doing kind of YouTube videos, long form YouTube videos. And it was just like the screening was bad. Like I was like tiny on the screen, or, the
when
lighting
we're done
was
here,
weird.
I'm going to show you my first video ever.
Oh my gosh.
You're going to be blown away. You're going to be like, that was you. Yeah.
I'll show you mine too.
It was terrible. Huh? But you started, right? Like, and so that's what I always tell people, because people ask all the time, right? The same way I seeked you out, right? They ask me, now they're asking me. It's so weird. I'm like, call her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just have to do it. You can't overthink it, right? You're not going to like the way that you look. You're not going to like the way you sound. It's fine.
Yeah.
Guess what? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right? Just do it and you'll get better over time, right? So those people who are out there and don't want to take that first step because it's the hardest, just do it.
Exactly.
Right. So you started with the memes.
Started with the memes. And then transitioned into videos. And I remember it was 4th of July weekend of 2020 where I posted my first one. Oh. And I just like threw the phone away and I was like, I need a shot of tequila. Like, I cannot think about that. I was just mortified that I was on there. Yeah. It was terrible. But I kept doing it. Even though it was very uncomfortable for me, I kept doing it. Yeah. And that's what ended up building traction. People started to follow me that weren't just my friends and family. Yeah. It started snowballing in the fall of 2020. I got on the radar of an organization called Justice HQ. That's some of the best attorneys in the state of California and probably, honestly, the world. Oh, wow. I fangirl over a lot of these attorneys.
Really? That's funny.
And all of a sudden they were following me and I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. This is great.
They're seeing my stuff. They love my videos.
And they were a huge encouragement to me. So I ended up getting accepted into that organization in fall of 2020. Was able to settle some of my first cases. And it was funny. I had about 1 month left of money in the bank, and then that first settlement hit. So it was just like, talk about keep the faith. Yeah. And it's just to the very end. Yep. And it worked out, and I had a lifeline again, and things were starting to shift. I was starting to build a little bit of a brand. People started to get to know me. Yeah. People started copying what I was doing. And so that was a good sign, like, okay.
Yeah, you go, like, this is good.
This is good. This is great. And then Reels came on the scene very end of 2020. Mm-hmm. Remember, I posted my very first Reel December of 2020, and it was to the Eminem song Without Me.
Oh, really? Oh gosh, that's funny.
And I like played both of the parts. I like changed my outfit.
Did you really?
And so put that out there, and it was very well received.
Yeah.
And it was
hilarious.
so much easier to shoot than the long form YouTube style videos.
Because the long form gets boring.
It does get boring.
Yeah. And there's only so much you can say.
Yeah. And to do that, to speak for like 6 minutes with no hiccups is
Hard.
very difficult. You know, I remember I did one, it's like 5-6 minutes on why you should opt out of class actions that I think is some of my best work. I think, 100 people maybe have clicked on it. I doubt anyone's seen the whole thing.
Nobody watched for 6 minutes. Yeah.
Hell no. But great information, but people's attention spans aren't ready for that.
No.
Or they're only ready for that once it's too late.
Yes.
And so Reels was
that would make a great reel, by the way. Don't do this. Don't do this before do this before you opt in. It's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually brought that up at a presentation I did the other day.
Yeah.
For Tesla. So always Teslas opt out of your class actions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So you can do it. You only have about 30 days. So your future attorney will help you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But Reels was the game changer for me because all of a sudden it was so much faster to shoot a ton of content at once.
Yep.
And it was being more well received. People were absorbing the information I was giving and thinking about, a 6-minute video. You chop that up into 30-second bite-sized morsels. You've got content for a month.
Yeah. 100%.
And people process information better that way. And so that I kind of became a machine at that point.
Yeah.
Like,
you've got a really good setup. I mean, you've got it down, right, to where you got your outfits and you've got it's simple.
Yeah.
Right? You're not overdoing it. You've got a system in place now and you're like, these are the things I'm going to do. And you bust it out. And so how much time do you spend in a month or in a week recording? Like typically?
So I do it monthly.
Okay.
So monthly, usually I'll shoot 1 to 2 times. I have the English and the Spanish channel now.
That's right. I saw that.
And then recently I took over the Latino Lawyers Bar Association pages, and that's so now running 3 accounts.
Oh, Jesus.
So that keeps me very busy. But normally filming 1 to 2 times a month.
Okay.
Those filming sessions are usually only about 2 to 3 hours max.
Okay.
And then editing, I do it all on the Instagram app, and then there's an app called Captions that I'll just throw in there. Super easy. So maybe at most 10 hours a month.
Okay.
And that's probably very...
That's good. I mean, and I think the reason I like that is because I think a lot of people feel like they've got to do 50 hours. Like it's like, I got to do it all day long. It's like, dude, doesn't have to be. The internet, Instagram and Captions have made it pretty easy.
Yeah.
That you don't have to be in Canva for 10 hours, right? Canva is a whole nother world. Like we could talk for 3 hours about Canva.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, simplifying it, right? And that was one of the things that you taught me was, here's what I do with notes, and here's how I know what I'm going to talk about, right? And here's my setup. I have the light, I have the camera, I have the chair. That's all I need, right? Like that's my tool belt. And I think so many people out there just think that they need like all of these lights and 7 cameras like we got going on right now. You don't need all of this.
No.
Although it looks really cool.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
But so I think that's been awesome that you've been able to grow that, right? And you have a lot of fun with it. Like I see it and I'm genuinely entertained, right? Like genuinely, I'm like, God, like I'm like, damn, it's so good. Like the one you had done the one that triggered me to reach out to you. And I was like, shit, she's good. I was like, fine, I'm going to have to reach out to her. Here I go. I'm going to be stalker fanboy, right? But that's how you learn, right? And again, I think that goes back to getting out of your comfort zone and doing that stuff that you aren't really good at. Although you're a good communicator, you do all of that other stuff really well, but you had to get out of your own way, right? In order for you to see success, right? And I think so many people don't want to do that. So many people are scared about what other people are going to think. Like hitting that send or that post button the first time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Jesus. That was scary stuff.
Sweating.
Yes. You're like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? But look back, right? You're like, why didn't I do that sooner?
Yeah.
Right?
And it's what I tell people too, are you afraid when a client calls your office? Are you afraid to talk to colleagues at events? if you're not afraid of people in real life, why are you afraid of people online?
Yeah.
It's the same concept.
Yes.
You know, just be yourself. If you're authentic and your intentions are good, I don't think you're going to have a problem.
Yes.
It's when you try to copy someone else or be something that you're not, where, you know, people are going to see through that.
Correct. 100%.
And, you know, that's not going to help you get your ideal clientele either, because you're showing one thing and you're going to attract something that's going to want that thing. And that's not you. And so it really does work to your benefit by getting out of your comfort zone and letting people in a little bit. You don't need to put everything on social media.
Yeah.
But enough to let people get to know your sense of humor, what you do, who you are, because realistically, we're in the service industry.
Yeah.
Our clients are going to have to get to know us anyway, and we're going to have to get to know them. So why not bridge that gap and
and you want to work with somebody you like.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, right? You totally do. So let's talk about law and settlements and cars. And I don't know anything about it, right? But I've seen some pretty cool posts that you've done. And so, like, you do the ones where it's like, don't buy these kind of cars. I'm like, oh dang, she like calling out these are the worst car brands, right? I'm like, oh, I own all of those cars, so that's terrible. But talk to me a little bit about like mistakes people make, right? Like mistakes, like issues people have. I'm curious to know about that, and stuff that you're seeing where you've been able to help people.
So I think a lot of it goes back to education. So we are not taught how to buy a car. We're not taught what warranties mean, how everything works, to what kind of documents you should expect when you buy a car, and what documents are the ones that are going to protect you in the end.
Yeah.
You just kind of trust the delership, and I don't know where
you sit there, they draw the 4 squares, right? And then you walk into the room and the guy sells you 17 warranties and mats.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, please sign here. Oh, this is just standard. It's great. Don't ask questions. Standard. No, absolutely not.
That's a big mistake people make, right? Where they think it's all like normal. But I love what you said right there, because nobody teaches you how to buy a car.
No.
Ever. Like I walked in and bought my first car and it was just like, okay, here I go.
Yeah.
They saw me coming.
Yeah. And it's kind of a beautiful thing too for me, because it is a level playing field. Both men and women get taken advantage of by car dealerships all the time. It's not just women, although we do kind of get the worst of it. But I have a lot of male clients that, you know, are completely scammed or told the wrong numbers or upsold and not explained what it is that they're buying. And then they talk to me and I have to break it down and say, you just bought an extra $10,000 worth of things that do not help you one bit.
Oh, man.
And so it is probably the best part of my job, is getting to educate not only my clients, potential clients, people on social media about how they can protect themselves, so that if they do have the misfortune of getting a lemon, I can actually help them.
Gotcha.
So that's the beauty of it. So I've got some clients that have purchased new cars, certified pre-owned cars. You know, I just settled a case today right before we got here. He bought a certified pre-owned Land Rover, was in the shop pretty much every 6 weeks since he bought it. Okay. Check engine light, over and over and over again. Same exact code kept coming up. But the dealership would, you know, do a little software update, clear the code, send him on his way.
Yeah.
And again, and again. He asked the manufacturer to buy his car back. They said, no, you don't qualify. Thankfully, he talked to me, and my services are free of charge to consumers. So that is
nice.
Great fun fact.
Free 99. If it's free, it's for me.
Yeah. So I do encourage people to reach out to attorneys. It's free consultations, free legal representation. You're really not going to lose out by making that phone call.
Yeah.
Luckily, they did make that phone call. I've been working them for a few months, and, you know, we were able to settle the case for a buyback and a civil penalty, which is money above and beyond a buyback.
Wow.
So kind of a punishment to the manufacturer.
Yeah, that's good.
For putting them through all of that. And that was free of charge to them. So they're getting their money back. They're getting money above and beyond that.
Wow, when they probably would have just sat and kept the car for as long as they could have until it would have died or whatever, right? Land Rovers don't last forever anyway.
No.
Right. So that's interesting because I think most people, like, I think lemon law, and I think I bought a car that's broken, right? But you were even talking about contracts, like issues with contracts at this buying of the car, right? And then there's issues. So what things should people look out for, like if they think they have a lemon? Like obviously the check engine light, is that like the main one? Because I'm thinking right now, like literally as we're sitting here, I'm like, I'm pretty sure my check engine light has been on for like a month and I have not checked. I'm such a guy, right? Like I think my wife gets in the car. She's like, that light is on. I'm like, I know. It's so weird. It doesn't shut off. So what things should people look at? Like for a consumer, what things should you be aware of or think, hey, maybe this car is a lemon, or maybe I need to consult with you?
Yeah. So from the very start, especially right now, the law changed us to used cars. So I would say if you're going to buy a car, new or certified pre-owned, you're going to be the most protected. If you're buying a used car, if you're buying a car from CarMax, you are putting yourself at extra risk because you're not going to be able to sue the manufacturer the way you would be for new or certified pre-owned cars.
Oh, wow.
It's all based off of the warranties that you're getting for free. That's the other issue. Everyone always calls me and says, I bought the best warranty. I spent so much money on it. I'm like, that warranty actually doesn't help you at all.
Oh, no way.
So a lot of times with the extended warranties, they actually don't even kick in until your original manufacturer's warranty ends. So you're paying for something for, 5 years
that you don't use.
You're not going to use, and you're not even going to get your full money back even if you cancel it, because they'll start prorating it, even though you haven't even touched it. And it's a deduction on your lemon law case because the manufacturer only has to pay for the car itself.
Shoot.
So if you start adding all of these extras, the gap insurance, the extended warranties, the theft deterrent products, everything that the car dealership's going to sell you, it can end up hurting you in the end. I actually have a client right now, prospective client, because I don't think financially lemon law is going to be the best for her. She traded in her old car but was underwater about $12,500 on it. So that much in negative equity.
Dang.
Added on like a $4,000 extended warranty package. A few months later, she wants to lemon her car. She would end up having to owe Mercedes about $10,000 to buy her car back. And so financially, a lot of people can't do that.
No.
And so it's something that you need to think. It's not just protecting yourself with the warranties. It's a lot of financial know-how and making good financial decisions, because that's going to affect your lemon law rights and how things will play out.
Yeah.
There are a lot of statutory deductions. So the other thing that I see is people will wait to take their car in. Sorry, like your check engine light. But
that's bad? You're trying to tell me that's bad?
That's bad. You should go to the dealership.
All right, Joe.
There's a statutory deduction for basically trouble-free miles.
Okay.
And that's calculated on the first time that you take your car in for the issue that they're buying it back for.
Oh.
So a lot of clients will just, it's been shifting like this since I got it. It hasn't been working right, but I didn't have time to, especially with the pandemic. I couldn't get in. They wouldn't give me a rental car. They wait 10, 15, 20,000 miles later. Then they take it in once it's really bad.
Ooh.
You're paying for all of that.
Yeah.
So those deductions can really, once again, affect the quality of your case, because if a buyback's only going to get you $2,000 in this market, do you really want to do that? Give up your car, end up with $2,000 to go buy another car in this market. So there's a lot of aspects to this that you wouldn't normally think about, but I've seen it play out by coaching so many clients through it.
I would have never thought of that.
Take it in, get it documented, take videos, make sure that they're writing. That's the other thing. So many dealerships, they know what they're doing.
They don't notate.
They won't write it down, especially even for check engine lights. You'll come in, they'll just reset the light and just say, oh, it's fine. Or a software update, it's fine. They won't write it up.
Oh.
Every single time you take your car in for repair, you need to insist they write it up.
Okay.
But a lot of times the dealerships will say, this is a known issue. It's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll just reset the light real quick. Don't worry. You don't have your proof for the mileage offset.
Yes.
Or you don't have your proof even though you've taken it in 3-4 times, which normally would qualify you. But because you don't have those records, you're
Doesn't
starting
count.
at ground zero.
Oh, wow.
And the dealerships know this, so they'll play it off. It's a normal issue. Don't worry about it. Just say, that's fine. It really doesn't matter if they try to repair your car or not. That's not part of the law.
Mm.
What's important is you have to present the vehicle to them for repair.
Yes.
And the way you get that is by getting the repair order or the work order when you drop it off. Joe says the check engine light is on.
No work order. It didn't happen.
Exactly.
Basically.
Exactly.
Wow, that's interesting. Wow, see, I learned a lot. I better take my dang car in. Here I am thinking Uncle Elon's just gonna fix it, but nope, probably not. Probably not gonna fix it. It's just gonna get worse, man.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and dropping some knowledge on us and spending some time. I know you're super busy. Give us the Instagram handle real quick.
West Coast Lemons and Señora Limon for my Spanish speakers.
Yes, Señora Limon. I love it. I love it. People have been asking me to do my stuff in Spanish, and I haven't gotten out of that comfort zone yet. I need to. Everybody's on me. I've had multiple people, but I'm gonna do it. It's one of my things. I'm just not there yet. So, but I'm grateful that you came. I'm grateful that you dropped some knowledge, and it was grateful to get to know a little bit more about you.
Thanks for having me.